What is up, everyone? I'm Jeff Lemon. This is the Mediocre Alaskan Podcast. Been doing something that I haven't done since I was a little kid, and that is trapping. I remember my brother and my dad and I, when I was, elementary school sometime, I was pretty young, we would go out and set some mink and some marten traps. Dad wanted to get enough material to build a hat and or some gloves for Grandpa. And so we had some limited success, but every once in a while we'd get one, which was pretty cool. I remember the body traps would show up in the marten or the mink had already perished. But I remember once we set a leg trap by the lake, and going down there, and the thing was still alive, and it was just we brought our dog with us, and we had a black cat too, and so we brought the dog with us. Obviously didn't bring the black cat, but there was a mink. Or no, it was a marten. It was still alive in the trap, and it was like lunging and hissing at the dog, and the dog was like, "Wait, this is different. Usually at home we get to play with the black cat, but this kind of blackish brownish thing, man, this thing looks pretty angry." And so the dog didn't get too close, just kind of had that curious, cocked its head to the side a couple times, like, "Why are we not? You look angry. Why are we not friendly?" But then Dad took a branch and killed the marten. So it was kind of, I wouldn't say traumatic, but it was definitely memorable, because I just figured we'd check the traps, we'd either have something or wouldn't. So you don't really, when you're a little kid and it's the first time going through this, you don't think about what's going to happen if the thing's still alive and you're going to have to take care of it. But Dad told me to turn my head, so I did. I turned my head, and then I heard the branch just thump mostly against ground, but also hit the marten, so it took care of it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he had turned my back. I don't know why I did turn my back, but just kind of the reality of it. And it was cool. It was cool. It was a anytime that you say it's cool or it's fun when you're talking about killing animals, people just jump on you and think, "How is it nice to kill the cute little animals, you murderer?" Well, some of those memories are some of the most fondest that I have, because I remember I was just so cold. I remember tromping down the river with Dad and brother like I had some big thing to do, and it was the boys that were out there, and that was a lot of fun. Setting the traps, just everything about it. And then if we got something, we dealt with that part. But everything else leading up to it was always a lot of fun. And I remember getting super, super cold once. We were trapping by this river, which is, you look for kind of the deeper timber that's by a river. And I was so cold. Probably the coldest I'd ever been as a kid. Or maybe I'm just remembering it now as one of those traumatic sort of coldnesses. But, we got back home and warmed up. But I just remember that was kind of the first time that I realized that, Dad can protect you from a lot of stuff, but man, that's cold and that's real. And if you fall through the ice, that's something. So I probably had to be, I don't know, 4th or 5th or 6th grade, or whenever you start to realize the gravity of these things, and you start to see that, not that your father's a failure, but he can't protect you from everything. And I do remember that as one of those moments. So there was another time that we went out I wasn't on this one. But my brother and Dad, I went out and set the traps. My brother and Dad went out after school to check the traps, and he locked the keys in the car. So Dad shot out, or I think he shot out a window to get in there, or used a rock or something like that. I don't know. It would have been kind of crazy if he shot it out. But sometimes Dad would get pretty stressed out. So it wouldn't surprise me if he shot it out, but I think that's just embellishment. I got to talk to my brother about this, because I haven't really thought about this for a long time. There's no way he shot it out. That's crazy. There's no, 0 chance. There's no way he shot out the window. Probably. Anyway, so we had to break back into the vehicle to get back. So that was kind of traumatic for my brother. He remembers that, and I'm not sure that was what he wanted to do. But there were 2 things that kind of stopped us from trapping. The first one was my brother and I were getting kind of, after a couple of years, we got a little bit older and we got into basketball, which happened to be when the trapping season was during the winter. And then the second thing was that Grandpa passed away. And so then we had Dad had we'd skinned the mink and marten, and we had got them tanned, but now we didn't have, we just had these tanned hides, and then, Grandpa had passed away, and so we just kind of stopped trapping, and then we just kind of had these hides that just hung, and I still have them in my room at Mom's house in Klawock. And so part of me getting back into it, 2 years ago, I bought some traps, and I thought, those things are just hanging there. If I get a couple more, let's make something. Let's finish that. Grandpa has passed and Dad has passed, but I think it'd be kind of a cool thing to go out there and continue that, or do that again, and get something and make something out of it. Finally, a hat or some mittens or slippers or something. In addition to getting outside and figuring stuff out, looking at the terrain and making a good set, that's most of it. That's a lot of fun to get out there and do that. But also the creative part of it, the building something, the sewing something, the processing of the hide, and then making something out of it. It's pretty appealing. I think for a little while I wasn't sure about trapping because I felt maybe a little guilty that I wasn't going to eat the meat, but I was going to tie some steelhead flies, and it was funny because I had, you look at the materials for steelhead or for flies, and there's a lot of feathers, and there's one where you can buy a rabbit mask. It's the face of this rabbit. It's like, oh, that's kind of crazy. And I'm not saying that if you tie flies, you're just as guilty or whatever, but there's just that. In order to have certain hobbies, there's so much that goes into it, and there's so many different. If you try to prevent from impacting animals at all, if you're not a true 100% total vegan, then a lot of the things that you want to do or like to do, there's going to be something that's dirty, messy, or whatever about it. And so if you try to avoid all those things, you're just not left with a whole lot. And so if you can go to bed, if you can sleep at night, and if you can wake up with a clear conscience, then whatever, man. So it also coincided with Abby had a little bit of interest in how that whole thing goes down. So we set some traps this week and got 2 mink, which is pretty cool. So we're going to get them thawed out and then put them on some boards and get them tanned. And then in conjunction maybe with the mink and marten from a long time ago, try to put together some mittens, gloves, or something. And I'm excited for the sewing part. I took native art when I was in elementary school over in Klawock, and so we did a lot. We did some sewing, and we did use some deer hide. I think it was deer hide to sew some moccasins, and I still have, or Mom still has those. They're pretty cool. So I have done very little sewing, but a little bit, and I think it'll be a cool craft, So it's not killing for the sake of killing. I'm kind of excited to see what happens. I'm sure they're going to be pretty terrible, but I'm going to have made them. Like, I will have done that. I will have made these mittens, and it's going to be a hideous looking hat or something. But I'm excited for it. It'll be fun. Hopefully that we can get enough. But so I kind of asked around when I bought these traps. I bought them 2 years ago and didn't use them last year, but ended up using them this year. And I went with a Duke number 110 Magnum body trap, but I kind of like the 120 a little better. It's bigger and better for marten, so the 120 Duke is a good one there. And then I also bought a 6 of the number 1 foot traps that was like $50. It wasn't much for a half dozen, so it's pretty sweet. One of them ended up not really working, but 6 traps for $50. That's not a lot to get started. And then when you're actually doing the set, you can build a little cubby. You can run that program there. You can build a little cordon off a little piece of root wad or something like that. There's a lot of ways. It's kind of fun to build something in that set, and it's creative. And you think about any sort of way that the mink or marten could get around there, and it's pretty fun. It's like a puzzle. And then you show up, and then it's been rewarded. So you take responsibility for that, and got some material. So I'm excited for that next part. But it got me thinking about wolf trapping, and I'd never wolf trapped myself. I'd gone out with some buddies for an article and just saw what went into wolf trapping, and it was crazy. And the traps that that you're using these Bridger Braun number 9s, and they're just massive. They're just so angry. I mean, they're pretty and it's symmetrical and whatnot, but you're like, dude, that's going to inflict some pain.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
And I get this is the first winter that I was back. When I moved back to Alaska, this was 2013. And I went out with these two guys from Prince of Wales, and they are just good trappers. Good trappers. They do it for subsistence, and then also to keep the deer population down because there was so much advocacy on to defend the wolves that the wolf populations were getting kind of out of control, and they were estimating. It was just a huge, crazy thing. So much down south money was coming up here to protect the wolves, and people who didn't live in Prince of Wales were making so many decisions on behalf of people who live there and understand and see what the populations were really like. So it wasn't just a matter of subsistence. It was also this idea that, hey, man, we depend on the deer, and that is our one big game animal on the island. We don't have moose, don't have elk. So we got to protect this resource, since they really took it upon themselves to trap, and then they got really good at it. And when those quotas came out, they would match the quotas. There was 2 or 3 guys that were getting almost all of the quota within a couple of weeks, which never set. I mean, it didn't make any sort of alarm in that if you think that there's hardly any wolves left and they're endangered, why is it that like 2 or 3 dudes are getting almost the entire quota in a couple of weeks? I mean, if it's that, they're either unbelievably good or they're good, and there's a lot more wolves than the people are saying that there are. But it was crazy going to the set. They'd already set them, and so I was just there for the checking part of it. And we get up on this first bait set. So there was a cinder block, and there was part of a beaver, I think it was, in that, and then a rock over the top. And they'd set buried 5 traps around it. And so we came up to it, and there were 2 traps that had been dug out and moved without being sprung. And I thought, how does anybody ever get a wolf? If they are so smart that they can walk around this rotting carcass, and these buried wolf traps, these buried traps, these foot traps, they're able to somehow figure out that they're there, and then dig them up and move them, obviously, with their mouths without setting off. At that point, I thought, I'm not an apex predator. These guys are the apex predators, and these guys who trap them are apex predators. But how does anyone ever get a wolf if they are that stinking smart that these 2 traps have been dug up? But 2 of the traps were gone. So one of them was still buried. 2 had been dug up, and then 2 were gone. And so we were on the look for these 2 wolves, and when they made the set, and most of the people do this up here in Southeast Alaska, or at least southern Southeast Alaska where I am, they'll do drag traps because there's a lot of stuff up here that stuff can get caught on. So you have the trap, and underneath the trap goes the chain, and there are these 3 like pieces of rebar that are on individual that they act like an anchor. And so as the thing tries to run off, that gets caught on limbs, on branches, on things like that. Because we don't get it. We get some snow, but there's on the tidal flats. If you're going on the tidal flats, there's a lot of stuff for them to get hung up on, and eventually they'll go around something and get caught up. So we were looking around for these two wolves, and if you go to tidal flat, you see some large spruce trees sometimes that they have these branches that just kind of stretch over the water. So you have to kind of go like underneath there, and then it opens up by the trunk. So I kind of ducked my head underneath between these branches and put my head up, and then in the opening I saw on the far side, I was looking at two wolves, and they had run and they had wrapped themselves around an alder tree that was behind the spruce, and they were both alive, and they were just sitting there staring at me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I had never felt so weak and inept and insecure and just baffled, yet still amazed. I mean, you're looking at live wolves; they're just staring right here at me, and it was crazy. So Dave, one of the guys we were with, shot them both, but they didn't like whimper. It wasn't like oh my gosh, you shot me. They just still stared. Or one of them did. One of them dropped immediately. The other one just kind of still stared at us with just hatred. And so Dave had to shoot it again, and then dispatch it. It was crazy. So that was my wolf trapping experience. I got some buddies who will go out and wipe out packs, which is huge, and to be able to do that. And if you listen to this from that down south, wolves are beautiful and were eradicated and are almost extinct, then this can sound brutal, it can sound cruel, but everything has, natural predators, but, there's nothing for the wolf, and there's a lot of food dependence. There's a lot of people here that depend on deer and elk and moose and all these big game animals for food, and there's nothing that's killing the wolves. And so you have these people who follow the laws, and they trap wolves, and they can sell the hides, but it's part of the predator-prey balance. They're getting something out of it for sure, and then also in doing so can save some deer. So, and some people say, I may or may not save deers. They were going to die of something else anyway, but it's something to do. And I think we judge certain people's, what they do. And, some people, they consider themselves wolf killers. Other people just quietly go about their business. But, when people don't really understand what the balance is here, and they view it from that down south perspective, they don't really understand how things work here. I know the interior, there's tons and tons and tons of wolves, and the trappers and the hunters aren't even putting a dent in the wolf populations. But they need to, because you have a lot of people who are dependent upon caribou up there. There's just a dynamic that people don't understand when they go and they judge people for what they do and why do you trap. And so a lot of times it's just, if you're not going to listen, then I'm not really going to bother explaining, because all you want to do is be angry. You don't really want to understand this. All you want to do is be angry. You want to yell and you want to call names, and you have zero patience for trying to understand. Some people do. Some people get it. Some people think, they'd never do it. I don't want to do it. I could never do that. I could never trap a mink. I could never trap a marten. I could never, shoot a wolf. But I get it. And that's fine. I mean, why are we so concerned with judging other people for what they do? Just whatever, man, whatever. So you kind of get tired of it after a while and try to defend everything that you do, because there's going to be people who are upset about it anyway. And so you just kind of do it, and if you have problems with the word enjoy and fun when it comes to trapping, then, if you don't want to do it, then that's fine. If you have problems with it and you think it's wrong, well, whatever. It's fine. You do what you want. The experience is, I think it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy it's 7 degrees outside, and you're all bundled up, and you're walking on this frozen snow, and you're figuring out a place maybe where one of these things, it's just a puzzle, man. It's great. It's a fun outdoor experience, a fun thing to do, and it reminds me of my dad and some of the good times I had when I was a kid, and it reminds me of that bonding with my brother too, and then it reminds me of the mink and the marten that I had that we wanted to make a hat for Grandpa with, and so I have good memories, good fond memories of not living off the land, but doing what used to be a necessity, and what used to be part of the culture, that now it's still part of the culture here, but by and large it's gone, and that's why some people judge it harshly, because they think that we have evolved far past that, and those are things from the past that we don't have to do anymore, and shouldn't do. But people get to exercise the freedoms how they want. So if you don't like it, you have every right to do that. And if you want to make comments, you have every right to make comments. That's fine. So I'm going to call that episode 125. Make sure you check out the mediocrealaskan.com for other content. And have a good week.